My name is Carol Saunders, and I serve on the worship committee. And one thing I really love about all of us is that we live in our everyday world showing our concern for human welfare, practicing meaningful, workable values, and those values help to uplift those people we contact and are with us throughout the time to keep emanating that nice aura. We come together bringing multiple backgrounds, and yet these shared humanist qualities help us embrace our ways of going and growing. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. I want to take a moment to extend a very warm welcome to everyone. If you're joining us online, please fill out a visitor form in the link in the description. We'd love to contact you. And some of us are bringing our best selves to this space. Some of us are bringing our struggling selves. All of us are welcome here, and all of us are loved. Some are already here with open hearts, and some of us aren't quite there yet because our hearts have gotten a little beat up over the week. We might have forgotten how to trust and be open. Your heart is welcome here. No matter how bruised, we welcome you among us. All of us are important, but we're here to drop our defenses and trust that what happens in worship is powerful and life-giving. Together, we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and wiser than when we woke up this morning. We welcome you here. There are a couple of announcements. Next Sunday is our annual meeting Sunday. We'll start with a pancake breakfast at 9 a.m. and our all-ages flower service at 10. Then our annual meeting at 11, and the kids' annual meeting of the year will be at 11 also. After the service today, come to the board and finance Q&A to learn about the budget, the business, and get any questions answered that you might have. And finally, well, I should say not quite finally, because I have a couple of other things here. On June 8th, the Circle Supper will be at 5:30 at Reed and my house, and I would like to have you sign up at the desk outside. We'd love to see you. It is time to register for the all-church retreat the weekend of August 11, 9 through 11, August 9 through 11. And this big event happens every 2 years at the beautiful Highlands Retreat Center in Allens Park, up in the mountains, 45 minutes from here. And there will be a full program of activities of all kinds for all ages and plenty of time to hang out with old friends. And plenty of time to meet new friends, too. Stop by the retreat information table after the service to learn more and then register online. Look for the registration link in the weekly email or on the uuchurchofboulder.org events calendar. Finally, in 2 weeks, on June 9 from 11, on June 9th from 11:30 to 1 is our next Finding Yourself at UUCB class, a chance for newer folks to learn more about what it means to be part of this community and how we're organized. Our flaming chalice is the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith and it suggests, perhaps, that within our separate lives builds a flame of unity and connection with all of us. Once felt, that fire cannot be extinguished, and so we gather, weaving our lives together. And this morning, I would like to invite Emily Smith to be our chalice lighter. And yes, you forgot to do this. So I'm going to do this while you...
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello. This is a little review of how my feet got here today. And it was compiled from being part of a event called Soul Matters and through talking with David. So it's about me, and some of you may find it relatable, and if you don't, I can be Charlie Brown's school teacher, if you will. So it's a plurality of my identity. What people might notice at first is I am a married white female. I value education and was raised a liberal Catholic. Behind that image, I grew up learning from people that in my life that I was a slow learner, and that was a problem. These experiences became a core lesson in forgiveness. While growing up, I found people did not understand neurodiversity. After failing high school, I sought to teach children who learned differently. I thought, children who learn differently need more positive experiences. The best part of teaching was that the children and I were slow, but I had the advantage of 2 teaching credentials that empowered me with research and strategy to guide them. Teaching became a highlight in my life. As a young adult, a hidden stressor grew. I found I needed to convince people that my dyslexia was under control and will not display itself and annoy anyone. I studied mystics to guide my coping skills. I learned the difference in my heart when complimented versus how a sunrise can impact my well-being. As an older adult, I choose not to worry when I see the dyslexia influence my work. This is a part of me. My current joys and accomplishments in life are reflected in my family and art. My husband and I see our 3 children, 2 of which are neurodiverse, as wise and kind people. My art helps me to be expressive. Today, I do not agree with the conservative movement of the Catholic Church. I see my heart at peace when I join the UUCB community on Sundays. The music is healing. The stories shared are always inspiring. I find it valuable to listen to people and their stories in the gatherings after Sunday service. I like to celebrate our humanity. I believe through communication we teach dignity. I just finished the Soul Matters group. This experience filled me with gratitude for the people I met and the gentle leadership Laurel brought to discussing our ideas and perspectives in an open and loving environment. The message I receive here at the UUCB is the focus is love, and I am enough. I light this chalice in gratitude for this church community.
We are bound together by creed, not by creed, I should say. Well, but by specific things that we all believe in exactly the same way. It's a kind of creed. We are united by shared values, expressed in our 7 principles, and by the commitments we make to each other about what creates the community. To name that commitment, we will all join together in person and online and speak our covenant aloud as one. We gather in fellowship to speak truth to each other, to reach out and touch one another, to care with each other, and to seek the truth divine. So be it.
Years ago now, someone asked me why the Unitarian Church where I was then didn't have a flag in the sanctuary, a U.S. flag. Plenty of churches do, after all. Why not put up this symbol, which would be intended to show respect to the country we live in? And what I didn't say then, what I should have, what I could have, what I'm saying now at least, is this: I love the dream that is America. I love the hope and the aspiration that it embodies, even as we fail to realize that hope, and always have. I love a country which aspires to an ideal it has never reached, which is trying to become, which has the promise or the chance to become something it isn't yet. I'm in love with that progressive notion of America always becoming, and I do honor that. And in this house, we need to be reminded of something bigger than that, something that precedes country, which is our common and universal humanity. That before race or class or age or income, before sexual orientation, before gender, before ability and aptitude, before every particular of who we are, we're human beings. And we're one. Before being citizens, before living in this country in this moment, we're human beings. And we're one. This is why I think the first work, the essential work, the real work of Memorial Day is bereavement. It's to remember the dead as human beings, to set down politics and symbols, not to make those deaths into something other than the humanity of those members of the armed services who we lost, who didn't come home, or who came home in body but not in spirit. The work is to say, we remember you, and we are with you, and you're with us still. Not because of what you fought for or what the unrealized dream of America is, but because you are human beings and we see you and we love you. In 1979, 1,000 people from dozens of religious traditions gathered at the Riverside Church Disarmament Conference. As one reporter said, to combine knowledge and political action and moral fervor to reverse the arms race and make peace real. The songwriter Carol McDade heard a speech that day rooted in the words of the prophet Isaiah. And she wrote the lyrics to the song we'll sing in a moment, a song that she called Creation of Peace. The whole book of Isaiah might be a meditation on war and peace. It was composed before and during and after the total destruction of Jerusalem in 587 BC. The ethnic cleansing that forced the Jews out of Judea into exile for 50 years before they returned. And chapter 61 of that book, where McDade took the words, it was written to Israelites who had returned after utter destruction and exile. The archaeological record bears it out. From that year, there's just a sheet of ash anywhere you look and dig in Jerusalem today. In that time, these words were written to a people returning when there was no home to return home to. It was written to a people wondering, what future will we build? And Isaiah says this, "The Lord has anointed me to bring good tidings to the poor, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom to the captives, to the prisoner, release. And they shall be called oaks of victory, and they shall rebuild ancient ruins, and the desolate places of you they shall raise up, and renew the ravaged towns. And the foreigner shall stand and tend your flocks, and strangers shall be your farmers and keepers of your vineyards." You can read that, maybe as colonialist and triumphalist, but I don't actually think that's what the writers were doing when they put those words in the mouth of the prophet. I hear among and to a traumatized people a vision and a hope for peace and for a future which was not merely the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. Ruins rebuilt in a multi-ethnic, multi-religious country where people and land flourish. I hear that in that chapter, it's the invisible, internal pain and hurt and brokenness, which is the very first thing to tend to when we rebuild. We'll build a land. We'll build a land together of peace, of justice, of community, not a literal nation state, but a future, a possibility which is real despite its distance. So when we sing it together in just a moment, when we sing it, don't sing it triumphantly. We don't sing it egotistically, looking at each other. Yes, we have built this land. Here we are. We're great. We sing it instead as a hope and a prayer and a tender thing to hold, a commitment to ourselves and to each other, however far away it might seem. You rise in body or in spirit. I'm delighted that Robin's going to lead us in singing this morning.
And just so you know, this is hymn 121 in the gray hymnal. However, it's a little bit, we're shortening it a little bit, so we're going to do the first and second verses, and then the chorus, and then the third and the fourth verses, and then the chorus. So only 2 times with the chorus.
Come, build a land
you join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation? It's this sense of stillness or of listening. I think that invitation, too, it's to a sense of going down the elevator, of moving down from head to heart, of paying attention to all of the feeling that's going on inside of you and around you, too, all these things that so often we block off or cut ourselves off from in order to survive or thrive or be safe in the world. It's like there's some hidden doorway in the heart that opens to feel the compassion and pain and joy of the people around you, this thing that you have to close off to make it through the world sometimes. And in this moment, in that invitation to a spirit of prayer and meditation, it's opening that up again. Spirit of life and love, on this Memorial Day, we lift up and remember all who served and serve in the armed forces, hoping for the safety of all in harm's way, and for the coming of a peace that will not be merely the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. Sheri Hostetler, an American poet and pastor in the Mennonite tradition, that historically pacifist church, writes this for all of our work in our spiritual lives, writes this called Instructions. Give up the world, give up self, finally give up God. Find God in rhododendrons and rocks, passers-by, your cat. Pair your beliefs, your absolutes. Make it simple, make it clean, no carry-on luggage allowed. Examine all you have with a loving and a critical eye, then throw away some more. Repeat, repeat. Keep this and only this. What your heart beats loudly for. What feels heavy and full in your gut. There will only be one or two things you'll keep, and they will fit lightly in your pocket. We'll be together in silence for a few moments. In the silence of this space, bring to mind those things in your life this week that you're grateful for, those things you're glad for, you're joyful for. And bring to mind now those things that you grieve for, the sorrow you carry, the worries you have. For all the joys and the sorrows on our hearts, we hold this compassionate space for love. Especially for Nicole, who writes, I'm concerned for my partner who was recently hospitalized on a long road of recovery. In a moment, when the music begins, I'll invite you, starting with the back of the room and the windows, then the front, to come forward and in the silence and the slow movement towards the front as you feel moved, to hold inside you all those joys and sorrows, to feel the silent presence around you of this whole ecosystem of people, of cares and worries, to know that you're a part of that. And then silently to take a stone and place it into the earth, in token of your joys and your cares and how they're held in a larger whole, an unseen landscape made visible. Please come forward as you feel moved.
So I just wanted to say a little bit about the song that I'm gonna sing next. Zombie was written by Dolores Riordan as a response to the IRA bombing in 1993 in Warrington, UK, and it's just a little bit outside of Liverpool. 2 children were killed. I think they were about 12 years old, and then 54 people were injured in this bombing. And she was Irish. She was born in the Republic of Ireland, and she was upset that the IRA was claiming that this was done in the name of all of the Republic of Ireland. Another head hangs lowly, child is slowly taken, and the violence caused such silence. Who are we mistaken? But you see, it's not me, it's not my family. In your head, they're fighting with their tanks and their bombs and their bombs and their guns. In your head, they are crying. In your head, zombie, zombie, zombie. What's in your head? In your head, zombie, zombie, zombie. Oh, 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 oh. Another mother's breaking heart is taking over. When the violence causes silence, we must be mistaken. It's the same old theme since 1916. In your head, they're still fighting with their tanks and their bombs and their bombs and their guns. In your head, they're dying. In your head, zombie, zombie, zombie. What's in your head? In your head, zombie, zombie, zombie.
How can it be? When is it moral to use violence to prevent greater evil? Say you are a Christian bishop living in the 4th century in what today is northeastern Algeria. You live at the edge of an empire whose enemies are not far away. And let's say that a raiding party of these enemies comes through the neighborhood, and for the sake of argument, because this is like the philosophy class version of this question, they knock on your door and they explain, Bishop Augustine, who would go on to be St. Augustine, We want to let you know we won't be attacking you today, but we will be going next door to kill your neighbors. And off they go. Augustine looks at his own sword sitting in the corner and all his friends and relatives nearby who have theirs, and knows that he could stop these bandits. He knows also that if he picked up the sword and killed these attackers, it would be a sin. He's a Christian bishop, so sin is the language of that time for moral evil. But then again, as the saying goes, all that's necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. So surely it can't be moral for him to take no action to prevent a preventable atrocity. Augustine reasons that when a terrible evil can only be stopped by violence, it's not just allowable, but a moral necessity. Now, he writes this 1600 years ago, beginning a long conversation among philosophers and theologians about what makes war just, a conversation which in a little bit I'm going to disagree with pretty vehemently. But for the moment, he writes this. He says, "They who have waged war in obedience to divine command have represented in their persons the public justice or wisdom of the government," they have the right authority, "and in this capacity have put to death wicked men. Such persons have by no means violated the commandment, 'Thou shalt not kill.'" I'll let that sit for a minute. Okay. There's a little bit of bracketing we have to do here. So we're going to pause on the obvious problem of making war in obedience to divine command. There's so much problematic about that. We're going to throw that out for a minute and consider instead, maybe sharper, more pointedly, the failure of anyone to do anything whatsoever to intervene in the Rwandan genocide in 1994. In a little more than 3 months, 750,000 ethnic Tutsis were killed. And our country, this country, certainly had the power to intervene, certainly could have used violence, but a much smaller amount of violence to stop a much greater one, and we let it happen. When and how is it moral to use force to protect someone else? Surely there must be times. In 1859, 6 men financed, in fact, 5 Unitarians, 2 of them ministers, and another financed a raid on the armory at Harper's Ferry by the abolitionist John Brown, who was going to seize those weapons, arm slaves in the South, and begin a general revolt. I cannot believe that in 1859, the freedom of enslaved people could have been won through a nonviolent appeal to conscience. Memorial Day itself, founded in 1868, was to honor Union soldiers who died fighting. So, okay, I'm saying this in a way, trying to make, or at least invite, maybe Augustine's reasoning can sometimes feel intuitively true when a terrible evil can only be stopped by violence. Maybe it is morally allowable. And the philosophers who have written and wrestled on this question over these last 16 centuries ask, okay, if this is true, then when and how? They say that for war to be just, you need compelling and coherent answers to big questions. Why is the war being fought? When is a state compelled or permitted to use force? How is that force used during combat? And for these philosophers, the why of war means a state can only undertake aggression if it meets 4 criteria: just cause, like the defense of innocent life, Augustine's neighbors; just cause, like the prevention of large-scale systematic violation of human rights, like the Civil War, say; or just cause, like restoring the conditions of decent human existence. So John Brown's raid to incite a slave rebellion was about that. They say, okay, if you have just cause, you also need proper authority. For Augustine, proper authority was easy because God said it was okay. Slightly more complicated in international relations in the 20th century. Today, people tend to mean the consent of the international community or the community of states to be affected by the arena of war. A third criteria is that it needs to reasonably be the last resort of the state. You know, Augustine can't just run over and start killing people. He needs at least to say, stop, don't murder my neighbors first before doing that. And finally, even if all of these conditions are true, the writers say a war is only just if there's a real possibility of success. Strong reason to believe that the peace which will result from the war will be better than if no one went to war in the first place. It's a little bit more philosophy. Stick with me for a sec, because just war also requires certain behavior during conflict. A distinction between soldiers and civilians, proportionality that only harms civilians in proportion to the importance of the military objective. Violence can only serve legitimate military objectives. There has to be fair treatment of prisoners and no evil means, atrocities, uncontrollable weapons. And on the one hand, I think these rules are lovely and clean and make a lot of sense and do not describe how the world actually operates. It is straightforward and short. There is a requirement to go to war, just cause, proper authority, last resort, possibility of success. It is practical and intuitive. Behavior in war, the distinction of soldier and civilian, proportionality of harm, military necessity, fair treatment. In that list, I hear a reasonable and practical set of limits on violence. And also, with every bit of that list, as I dig through it, as I say it, as I read the words on this page, I hear the distance getting larger and larger from the catastrophe and atrocity which is always and inevitably warfare. Distinction, proportionality, fair treatment, each of those is a step back away from broken bodies, bleeding and burning buildings, last resort, proper authority. The discussion is thick, and the actual violence is far over the horizon now, away from us who think about this coolly and dispassionately. Proper authority and just cause combat is a dream, a distance, an idea, not a fact. Because however clear the philosophy of the just war might be, the further away from the horrifying fact of violence, the easier it is to delude ourselves about what's going on. Augustine says this himself with a perfectly clear absurdity, our own capacity to delude ourselves. He writes, this is a verbatim quote, translated, but quote, "The wise man will wage just wars, for if they were not just, he would not wage them." This is my dog's "if you didn't want me to eat that chicken, you wouldn't have left it on the counter" defense. It must have been left for me because it was on the counter and I ate it. The wise man will wage just wars, for if they were not just, he would not wage them. Which feels so obviously ridiculous when Augustine writes it a millennia and a half ago. But these are the same stories that we tell ourselves too. It's moral disengagement in the disguise of reason. Moral disengagement is an attempt to deactivate and disengage your internal moral controls. It's like putting the car in neutral, right? The moral engine spins, but it doesn't go anywhere. It's not connected to anything. Moral disengagement takes the form of a logical and reasonable argument. Now there is a part of you hearing any news report on the war in Gaza, the starvation, the destruction, the death, there is a still small voice in you that says, this is clearly absurd and inhumane. Just like there's a part of you hearing the atrocities of the October 7th attacks on Israel, the randomness of murdering civilians, which said, this is clearly a horror for which there cannot be justification. But then comes the voice of moral disengagement, trying to overrule the voice of conscience. Surely, it says, surely those good, practical, fair, true, ethical standards we all agree on, surely they don't apply here. And it's difficult to say this without sort of dripping venom, but this is at the heart of arguments made every day by politicians and pundits. It goes like this. Of course we believe in not harming civilians. Of course, everybody believes. Of course. Of course we're good people. Of course we don't want that to happen. Of course families in a war zone shouldn't starve while the hospitals are bombed. Everybody knows that. We don't disagree. It's just that in this particular situation, other things are more important. Nor is it just the violence of Israel's military where I hear that sort of a justification. I hear, of course the Hamas murders on October, of course they were, everybody knows they were terrible. No one is thinking they're a good thing. But in this situation, after everything that Israel has done for generations, what else could they have done? Moral justification means you reconstrue problematic behaviors as acceptable because they ultimately achieve a noble or desirable goal. So they must be acceptable. The war is just because a just person wages it. This is Mary Grace Antony, a researcher on how we talk, especially about refugees and migrants. And she goes on to say that hand in hand with moral justification is euphemistic labeling, using strategic linguistic devices to disguise or conceal reprehensible behavior, making them sound innocuous, less harmful, less despicable. For instance, collateral damage. Reports that a threat has been neutralized, rather than detailing the brutal reality that human beings were killed. And finally, she says, this last piece of moral disengagement, along with justification and labeling to create distance, is advantageous comparison. It makes undesirable behavior seem benign because of what the alternative would be. And I've heard that. Hamas seeks the total destruction of Israel, says Netanyahu. Surely, he says with sarcasm, surely the partial destruction of Gaza is better than the total destruction of Israel. It's easy to get trapped by that and start into the argument of it, right? But I don't want us to get hooked by that. Instead, each of these, moral justification and euphemistic labeling and advantageous comparison, they're strategies to turn off your moral brain under the guise of reason. They say your ordinary way of thinking, of feeling about the morality of war, it's fine, it just doesn't apply to this war. And there are reasons and justifications and explanations, all presented in a form that asks for a rational answer back, that makes it hard for you to say, I know this is wrong, even if I don't know what right looks like here. The theologian Reinhold Niebuhr writes that reason is the servant of impulse before it is its master. Which is to say, our our faculty of reason, our ability to think about cause and effect and relationships, about whether evidence adds up. It's not that that is a bad or broken or compromised thing. It's not that that is hopelessly suspect. And it is the servant of impulse before it is its master. It's easier to find why a war is just once you've already decided that it is just. Whatever merit the just war tradition might have in theory, in practice, arguments about just cause and proportionality and the distinctions of soldier and civilian are weaponized in the service of moral disengagement to disconnect you from the love, the compassion, the essential humanity at the center of your values, and trap you into reasonable-sounding logical arguments that don't go anywhere. We argue over who did what, when, and how much violence is enough and too much instead of simply saying, this is wrong. And you don't need an answer or an alternative or a solution before you say it. You don't need to analyze or judge or weigh the alternatives. This is wrong. Give up the world, says the poet. Give up self, give up God. Pair your beliefs, your absolutes. Make it simple, make it clean. Keep this and only this, what your heart beats loudly for. What feels heavy and full in your gut. There will only be one or two things you keep, and they will fit lightly in your pocket. Reason in the service of compassion, and never without conscience. It fits lightly. Hold it close. Nothing but peace is enough. Amen.
So if you'd rise in body or spirit to sing hymn 161, Nothing But Peace. Full disclosure, I just learned this. Reverend David also did not know this until Dr. Emily sang it to him this past week, so we're all going to learn it together. And Carmen is going to play it through first so you can hear the melody, and then we're going to sing it 3 times. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me.
This month, our offering goes to the Boulder Area Sanctuary and Immigration Coalition, the BASIC, BASIC. And I invite you to give as generously as you are able. And for those online, you can use the QR code or find a link in the video description. For those gathered in person, you can scan the QR code or make a donation as the ushers now pass the baskets. May our gifts be used to enact justice, bringing peace and love to our Boulder community.
Give up the world, give up self, give up God, pair your beliefs, your absolutes, make it simple, make it clean, no carry-on luggage allowed. Keep this, and only this, what your heart beats loudly for. Amen. Rise in body or spirit. Let's close in song together.